Let's hear your comments or questions that you may have. And we have a mic wandering in the back down the aisle, so if you just raise your hand. And while we're waiting for anyone to comment, is there anyone here at the table? We've got mics that you want to say anything in response to what you've heard here already.
Can you comment on how Asian Americans fare in the system? You know, the other groups were discussed, but not Asian Americans.
Asian American children, when you look at their well-being in the state of Michigan, actually they're better off than white children in terms of their economic and education outcomes across the board, really. What we have to keep in mind is that what we call Asian is actually a very diverse population, similarly to Hispanic. So we sort of lump lots of diversity together. But the primary, I would say, Asian nationalities that we have in this state are Indian, Chinese. They're often highly educated and they've immigrated to have a career here. So it's a very different situation than what we have, where we had a lot of people in our African American community in the manufacturing sector, where we had decent jobs at one point, and it was a ticket to have a middle class life, and that's simply not the case anymore.
In 2006, the Department of Human Services released a report moving towards better outcome for all of Michigan's children, which was reported by the Advisory Committee on Overrepresentation of Children in Color in Child Welfare. Did your group, when you were investigating this, refer back to those figures and see if there's been any improvement, or whether any of the recommendations from the 2006 report have had an impact on whether or not you think that, bearing in mind that report may or may not have had an impact, whether your report will, and how we get to the point where the recommendations become practical outcomes?
Thank you. If I can just respond, then in fact, we broke into subgroups looking at policy as well as the data collection and so on. And in the subgroup looking at policy, we looked at specifically that report as well as others. We felt there was a whole lot that we didn't need to recreate, but we needed to understand and lift up in the context of the new understanding we had from the new data and so on. Let me just say one other thing, and then I'll open it up for others here. One of the key things that we decided, and I personally am most excited about, is that our next step is to create an advisory committee of stakeholders who will be responsible to meet twice a year for the purpose of looking at the recommendations and evaluating, okay, how are we doing? As they go through those and getting any new input as new data is collected, as we evaluate the programs in various situations, so that that will become part of the ongoing. It won't be just a static report, but it will be this ongoing dynamic. Maybe others want to respond to the question.
The only point that I want to add is that obviously that 2006 report was something that we were plainly aware of, and I think that when the coalition began, we acknowledged the existence of that report, and one of the real missions of this coalition was to take that report and ask, what did that report lack? And the obvious lacking, if you will, of that report was data to implement that report. And so that report actually formed the real mission behind this coalition.
I'm concerned about the number of children continuing to be in poverty, and at the state level as well as at the local level, to me it seems like it should be an all-out SWAT team. That's not a number that, from an economic standpoint, or just living in the state, or we should be ignoring, and yet I haven't seen the reaction, to that. I followed the, kids count for years, and, at this point, how can we talk about a recovery? So I'm just interested in your thoughts, I guess specifically a question of looking at this overall picture. It seems like if we don't address that poverty issue, that's at the heart of it.
I was just going to say, I couldn't agree more, and it's very disturbing to see options like the earned income tax credit actually be reduced at the state level from 20% down to 6%. The current push for a minimum wage. I was looking at what it costs for infant care. Infant care would use up essentially half your gross income if you were making minimum wage, the current minimum wage. So it is a puzzle about why we don't sort of connect the dots around child poverty and what we can do to improve the economic lives of kids and families.
I'm thinking, Michael, I want to call on you because you reflected in your remarks some of the things you were finding and becoming aware of.
Yeah, I think when we talk about poverty in youth, I think that's the reason that we're in the predicament we're in. You talk about transportation issues. The poverty issues are really what the big issues. And I'm skeptical to say this, being a local guy, but there's a huge disconnect from the end user, from the policy of the end user. And really, we're seeing that improve, and there's some policies and procedures that are coming down that are really improving that. But really, ultimately, what it's going to take is funding. It's going to take funding. It's going to take systematic change in the programs that we have. But really, for those kids to have a chance, we're going to have to really address that. And it's not getting addressed.
And I'd like to also say, from a practice perspective, that's why we focus on the educational aspect of it, because that also creates struggles, because it is hard to believe that a lot of our kids right now are the first high school graduates. But that creates challenges that we don't think about, and that is the family starts saying, you think you're better than us, and so they deal with not only poverty, but even to break that cycle of poverty is really in conflict sometimes with the culture in which they're raised. So we have to really continue to uplift them, and I think, again, that moving it from 18 to 21 makes them have a platform to discuss that challenges and us be able to support that child through those challenges, because it's hard to say, I'm giving up my family in order to be successful, to create a whole new opportunity for my family. And so you're absolutely right. It is a tough one, and we're getting there, but we have to get there through measurables like how successful are you with your kids graduating? Do we have job opportunities? And we have a lot of board members now to corporations, and we've got to do a better job of facilitating those individuals to be a part of the success, because it is a very tough thing when you've been on welfare for 6 generations and they think that that's the way, having another child. But then there are laws that have come into being now that actually makes it more difficult. So they don't move as fast as the system moves sometimes in terms of policy procedures. So I think we have to do a balance of what are we going to be measured off of to be effective as child welfare professionals. And I think that should be one of the key, moving children from one point to another point through education and eliminating poverty as a part of their future.
My name is Linda Lee Tarver. I'm part of I'm one of the commissioners for civil rights. It's a policy-making body as well, and one of the interests I had in this was the racial disparity component. Is there anything that the Civil Rights Commission can do to aid in this in terms of recommendations that you can make?
Let me just say, as a commercial message here in response to that, that I think the people here and others in the coalition are willing to, we have data, we have reports, we have experience and recommendations, and we're willing to meet with folks to go through that. And
Let me jump on to
Sure.
Lynn's remark. And Linda, we're obviously so pleased to have you here, and we recognize all the good work that you do for the state, and we're really honored, and we really should have recognized you from the podium, so my apologies on that. And I think that, to the extent that you and your commission can endorse, for example, proposed legislation going forward, such as the legislation that we spoke of, that was such a huge initiative on the Department of Human Services, the 18 to 21. That was a huge undertaking. There will be other steps that I think comes out of this coalition and the oversight that we're looking going forward. But we view, you as a partner to this, and your presence today is really recognized and acknowledged and appreciated. And I think going forward, we certainly will call on you to partner on this issue.
And I think from a price perspective, I think things have changed somewhat. We got a long ways to go to raise the rights, but if you looked at the chart about number of kids in foster care, it went from 15,000 to 10,000 because the state is really doing a lot more with family preservation. Guy Thompson leads that chart to really look at how we can really understand that keeping a child with their families is key, and that is a right that a child has, but there are some situations where that's not the best. So we shouldn't have a one blanket kind of solution to these things, but when we can do it. So my organization used to be 100% foster care adoption. That's less than half of what we do now because we're working with children, as the judge pointed out, that child now that get that call from Kmart, and because mom got frustrated because she got laid off, dad got laid off, he left, and the kids that used to go in the Foot Locker, and now she's going to Kmart getting $20, and the 12-year-old says, I hate these shoes, and she reacts to it in the way my mom used to react to it. And now somebody calls, well, she shouldn't lose her children. So we work with that family. So
Which is kind of the cultural norm. When I was growing up, you got spanking.
Yeah.
You got a beat down
Right.
if you were out of order, considered out of order. And culturally,
Right.
I'm not sure if that's an issue as well.
there is. I didn't know there was a protective services.
You would have gone. Yeah.
They know it 2 years old now. Kids say, if you touch me, I'll call PSI, but you can't even read. But they know, so we have to understand that kids communicate a lot better than we do sometimes.
They have their own phones.
I'm going to move on because we're going to get too much information about about Michael's background here. But I do want to wrap things up here because I appreciate your showing up here today and participating with us in looking at this issue. We think what we have done is initiate not a report, but a plan of action. And so we're dependent upon y'all to pick up on that through the recommendations, and again, we're willing, and I'm playing off the last questions and comments, to take this message wherever you think it needs to be heard, and we're willing to discuss that. But we're also going to set up a mechanism through that advisory committee that will operate through the court administrative office to be following how we're doing with the plan of action, and that will be our ongoing effort. But let me thank all the folks here. I think we did a good job of bringing a good panel together, and we should thank these folks. And also thank Michigan State University for letting us use their infrastructure through the forum process to present this to you and invite your ongoing interest in participation. Let me put us back in the hands of Anne Marie to dismiss us. That's the benediction kind of thing.
Thank you, Len, and thank you to all of the panelists and to you as well. I think that you can't let us off easy. You can't let Michigan State University off easy. I mean, MSU and University of Michigan, we have some of the best schools of social work in the country, and lots of other things going on campus. I think that wherever you can be present and deliver this message and call on people to help assist this effort of raising people out of poverty and helping our young people, I think you need to send that message. We forget, right? We're so busy parenting our own and doing the best that we can, showing up for work every day and being kind to the person next to us and so forth. So I think Linda's question kicked off is the question. What can we do? Gosh, I'm sitting here, I wasn't aware of these drastic, dramatic numbers that we have in front of us. How can I impact those in a positive way? So as you do go home or back to your office and you read over the recommendations and share them with your colleagues, think about what role can I play with this? And that's exactly what I was thinking. They talk about here exploring how to engage in courageous conversations around race and ethnicity. I'm not saying that correctly at all, but you got it. I know places on campus that are asking that question and being courageous and trying it out in different ways, and I'm going to talk with them. You know, I was just amazed by this recommendation, explaining the differences, providing training to child welfare workers and supervisors, explaining the differences between poverty and neglect. And again, we have some of the best schools of social work in the country right here, and we're still doing that. Let's make darn sure that that curriculum in those schools is addressing this, and that we have ways for people who are not in that school or that major to understand, or at least develop some understanding of the difference. So again, thank you for being here. We covered a lot of territory today, I know, and we have lots to do. This year has been just phenomenal for me personally in thinking about these issues, and I think that because many of you have continued to return to our forums, I hope that it's been the same for you, and I've gotten that message. I appreciate your evaluations and your comments, and we've gotten a number of ideas from that, and we'll just keep looking at those. And so if you would complete that evaluation, I know the panelists would appreciate it as well. Refer people to the website and the resources we've posted on this topic on the website. And again, thank you to our panelists for all your passion and all your thinking about this, and your sleepless nights in putting this report together and communicating the messages that you have laid here before us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.